Okay. Good morning, Pam and Kathe. We're here to talk about what's going on with the wild horses and burros and the scandal involved. So, Kathe, why don't we start with you, and you can tell us what's going on with out there in Colorado at Canon City Prison.
Okay, Staci, what I've been checking Canon City Prison for almost a year and 8 months now, and it all started with San Wash Basin and them taking horses back last year. Anyway, bottom line is Steve Leonard, who is the Colorado State BLM Wild Horse and Burro Manager, resides at Canon City, and I've had talks with him, as have Pam's had many conversations with him and has known him probably longer than me. But anyway, bottom line is every time I talk with him, he tells a lie, and in the middle of his lies, he makes up more things. It's like he should just keep his mouth shut, like Chris Kellerman at Wheatland facility. But anyway, bottom line is he's stating that there's 2,500 plus horses at Canon City. And there's no way the pens, the 20 acres that he has available to him could house that many horses. And I've gone to Canon City Prison since February of 21 and done before, during, and after. So every time he makes a statement, a BLM bulletin or anything like that, I head right for Canon City and I take the before, the during, you know, like what he's saying. For instance, when he said he took 427 horses from West Douglas, I went immediately after he said some. He told Return to Freedom that he took some horses, like on a Wednesday. So on Thursday, I go up and there's only an increase of about 24 horses from West Douglas, because I found the area. It's a hidden area back behind the trees, and there's some black netting up, and it's really kind of hard to see them, but I found them. And bottom line is there's no way 427 horses, which he said later is what the amount was taken to Canon City Prison. The same thing with San Wash Basin in September. He states he took 643 horses. I don't know, Pam, if I'm getting the numbers right, but at any rate, I went immediately. I went on September 1st, the day of the roundup. Instead of going to San Wash Basin, I went to Canon City Prison. I took before pictures of the prison, which only showed about 275, maybe 280 horses total. He was supposed, mind you, he was supposed to have over 1,943 horses there at the time. And there's no way that many horses, I mean, I photographed with a telephoto lens on private property, which a friend of mine allowed me to do. He says I could take pictures of the horses anytime I want. And there's the most horses I saw in September, the day of the roundup, was about 208. I actually slept at the prison not at the prison. I slept in my truck on my friend's property and listened to those poor horses all night long. So I know what it sounds like up there even. Anyway, bottom line is, then I went directly, I left because I knew that Steve Leonard was going to send the horses to slaughter down to Route 89 into Arizona. And while I was down there with the aid of Navajo indigenous and Hopi, I found Russell Tank, which is a whole story in itself, but it's the BLM on United States Forest Service land, dispersing the wild horses that they just take directly in semis, couture semis, and other contractor semis. They take them directly to this dispersal site, which there were hundreds. Like my friend said that he saw over 400 horses in those pens. And that's how I found it. As I befriended him. It took me 3 days to befriend him, to the point where he trusted me enough to show me where that Russell tank was. So bottom line, yeah. So then I streamed back to Canyon City again. More pictures. No increase in horses. No way were 600 plus Sandwash Basin horses ever taken to Canyon City. I saw an increase of maybe 90 to 100, but they had pregnant mares at the time too. But now, today, I was just there on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of May, and there's more horses there in October 7th, after the television and everybody went up there to film, blah, blah, blah. There's the same amount of horses there as were on October 7th. And I have locals right there that have their properties surrounding Canyon City, the pens, the facility. And they said they've never, on October 7th, they said they'd never seen more horses than what are there at that time. And it's the same amount that are there now. So how does Steve Leonard, I always say, Steve Leonard say that there are 2,500 horses? I have photographs of 2,500 horses. Oh, I know I have photographs of about 1,500 horses at Wheatland, and there's no way that there were ever 500, 600 horses at Canyon.
Okay, let me ask a couple questions. Has there ever been a list given by Steve Leonard or anyone from the BLM, literally just a numerical list going down of all the horses listed? I know they don't name them, but they do a branding, because that would obviously clarify and prove that the BLM is being forthcoming, which of course we know that they're not, because obviously they wouldn't be able to produce that. So has any of the nonprofits ever thought to ask anything like that?
Well, SWAT is completely combined with the BLM with Steve Leonard, and SWAT out of Craig, Colorado, and Sandwash Basin have been the history of the horses for many years out there. So they know the horses by name. They know when the foals were born. They have IDs on every horse supposedly that was at Sandwash Basin. And by the way, they are also Wild Horse Warriors, Cindy Wright and Elite the Dove, also overpopulated that basin. From the day I met them in October 2020, they were saying there were 800, 900 horses out there, and I've never seen anywhere close to that, anywhere. And so they're feeding all this information to the BLM, and the BLM's just loving it because it feeds right into their overpopulation, killing drought, killing the land, drought, all the propagandas that we've heard for 60 years from them, for them to reason to take horses.
So now SWAT stands for the Sandwash Advocate Team, and this is a so-called nonprofit. They raise money to dart the horses with the PCP. So would it be that the SWAT women are exaggerating, if not outright lying, about the number of horses so that they can raise more money to dart them?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, now at first, when I first met him in 2020, I had no idea what was really going on, but I'm an old farm girl from northern Colorado. I know how to count animals, what land looks like, and how many bodies can fit where and all that kind of stuff. And from what I see, I mean, if I see 1 or 2 or 5 horses together, that does not equal hundreds of horses on this supposed big area. Well, the avos out there and photographers have all conditioned the horses that have been out there for the last 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. They've conditioned them to taking photographs and safaris and things like this, to where the horses have kind of, they led themselves down to the southern end where all of the issues were about being off range and being out in the highway 318.
Right.
We got to build a fence, blah, blah, blah. You know, we need water and all these donations. I mean, at one point, Warhorse Warriors had over $120,000 in their bank. And since then, who knows where that's really gone, because I have an Excel spreadsheet of their expenditures for like 20 and part of 21, and nowhere does it doesn't break it down like any spreadsheet I've ever seen. You know, it's like it's not transparent. And that's the same thing with Steve Leonard. There's no way he doesn't keep pen reports. Since he's been there for the almost 5 years he's been there, he does not keep pen reports where they go out and they count the pen. They're supposed to give horses, certain styles of horses, foals, mares.
Hello?
But he's supposed to give a special feeding, special food to them, and none of that's documented. And in fact, I've noted when hay stacks come in, when they fill the hay barn and stuff like that, and they literally let the horses almost not have anything to eat for a couple of weeks before they get more hay. The horses are in good shape. They're not starving like what Carol Walker said last year. That I've never seen starving horses there at Canyon City. I've seen them not eating a lot, but you know, not skin and bones thing like she tried to portray.
And Carol Walker, she's a well-known wild horse photographer. She's not an advocate, but she's a photographer, and she seems to spend a lot of time in Canyon City. But when I've been on her Facebook page, it's really all about selling pictures, and there's really not a whole lot of information about the horses and what's going on. The whole thing with the adoption, the whole thing with they had this program where the inmates, right, were taking care of the whole thing with the inmates taking care of the horses. I believe also at Canyon City Prison, aside from having human prisoners and obviously horse prisoners, they also have dairy cows. Is it? Do they have
the dairy? I believe they sold off the dairy cows last year.
Okay.
In like probably by May, because I was there February, March, May, June, August. I didn't think I went in July at all. September, October, November, and January. And the last time I saw calves in that field was in 21, and by May of 21 they were all gone. And I heard locals saying that, yeah, the dairy's not going anymore. I haven't had a chance to call the prison agriculture. It's called Prison Industries, and under one heading is the agriculture, and that's where the horses are. They're headed under the agriculture heading.
right?
So
Now, when they had the dairy cows there, obviously we know that the horses were kept in pens, kind of like a feedlot. Now, were the cows allowed to roam free, or were they also kept in like a feedlot type?
Cows were kept up at 4 Mile, and there were an expansive range of cow pens and livestock pens, but those haven't been. I've been going up there for almost 2 years now, and I've never seen a cow up there. I did see the calves, because they do have an area back in the back of the dairy, but it's all old. And I just have a friend, Marcus, who's an ex-con, who just got out about 9 months ago. He's in a halfway house. I interviewed him, and he was the calf pen manager at the prison. And he said that it looked like they were getting ready to shut down then, and that was in 2020. So, I mean 21. So, so no, I haven't seen any calves or cows or anything this year. Another local that lives to the north said that she wants to know what they're doing with the field, because they had corn in there and it's all weeds now. She's really upset about that. But she also said somebody had come by and asked her, where's the dead horses? And she was flabbergasted. She lives right there. She could see over her field into the back of that prison where supposedly all these West Douglas horses are. And
Right.
she didn't see anything amiss. Nothing, nothing indicated that there were dead horses, that there were movement of people that don't belong in the prison, stuff like that. And furthermore, in 21, there were no prisoners able to help. In 20 and 21, there were no prisoners helping Steve Leonard. He told me himself on February 23rd, 21, he told me that he had no help. He only had 3 of his hired people feeding the horses. And he said he rarely goes to the prison, because I asked him to go take photographs, because I wanted to know about the Sandwash 10, the ones they've taken in a bogus roundup from Sandwash Basin in January. And Pam and I were both there at that roundup. SWAT, we didn't see SWAT. The only person we saw was another photog, Nadia Ryder, and she wasn't taking pictures of the roundup. I was taking pictures of the pens, and I have photographs of Razzle and Dazzle and Pearl, the last known freedom pictures of them, right there at the pen.
It doesn't sound like the photographers are taking pictures of anything other than pretty horses.
Pretty horses.
Yeah, it doesn't really sound like they're taking pictures of any of the people that work there, or any of the trucks coming in and out, or any kind of questionable action or behavior. Right, exactly. I've seen all their pictures, and when you go on their website, there's no information about anything going on, questionable. When we obviously
set up, like Carol Walker will take pictures. She'll go out to Red Desert, or she'll do this and that. She'll start making stories up about these horses' families and stuff, and then 6 months or a year later, there they are getting rounded up. And oh my God, this is the last photograph of such and such Blue Zeus, the last
Blue Zeus. I've seen that where it's like, oh, the last picture before they're rounded up or gelded or killed. Right. And obviously that's also used for donations.
I actually, at West Douglas, I was to the end of my point. By that time, I started at Sandwash Basin with our 10 that got taken for safety and for off range and all the excuses they use. But I actually started asking the locals, Craig and Hayden and Mabel, and saying, Rouch and Moffat County, you need to get out to the basin and show the real. You need to get out there and show people's faces. You need to show what's happening. At that time, they weren't using semis to load horses. I saw 5 semis on CBS Channel 4 News here in Denver on before September 1st. They were all loading up and getting ready to go. 5 semis, that's 150 horses just there. And once they get in those semis, they're not going to BLM.
Right.
150 horses did not go to Canyon City all at once. And at the beginning of the roundup, I would say they were probably taking 48 to 60 horses to Canyon City, but they would have been the Sandwash Basin popular ones. And they took over 743 horses, which some were Adobe Town horses also. So those were in semis. We have pictures of semis going through the basin. When those horses are in those semis, they're going to slaughter. They're going to the slaughter route. There's no other way. There's no way couture contractors or any of the other contractors in those semis are taking horses to Kansas City. And because, first of all, the people in Canyon City, Florence, and everywhere around have never noticed 4 or 5 trucks at a time bringing horses in. And the people who live right there have never seen that many horses appear all at once. And I have before, during and after pictures, and I've only seen anywhere from 20 to 40 horses appear at once.
Now, how big is
So-
Canon City? Is that like a big city, or is that more like a rural area?
It's, you know, the population, I don't think I think there might be 50 or 60,000, but
Okay.
it's a prison.
Okay, so it's not right. So it's like a prison town. So my point is,
Yeah.
it's not like a big city where you might not notice things. Clearly, it sounds like
Oh no, everybody.
right, if 4 trucks went through, you would kind of notice it.
Oh yeah, everybody would know. And
Right.
plus, like now, the guy that just delivered hay, because there's hay there since March 3rd, and since March 4th, when we went to Pathfinder, I went back to the prison several different times.
Right.
And there's hay that has come in since this outbreak, supposedly. So
Right.
you would think that the way that small town, or the way fire, you know, gossip or whatever it might be, information gets around, that somebody would have said, oh yeah, a whole bunch of trailers were coming in through 4 Mile, and you know, what did they have in there, and blah blah blah. You know, nothing. Nobody saw anything out of the ordinary. And all I've seen of San Wash Basin horses that increased from September, from the big roundup, was possibly 60 to 90 horses. They already had some there that they were lying about. They already supposedly had over 2,000 red desert horses, which Carol Walker and Claire Staples of Skydog lied about. There's no way they were walking around in muck and through pens of thousands of horses, because they don't exist. And the pens they were in, I believe, was the old goat housing. They used to have goat manufacturing there too, with the cows. But I believe the prison industries are getting rid of livestock, their livestock industry. And I've been told that, Marcus told me that he thought the dairy was done, and that was last year, 21. So, and I mean, he was the pen manager for the cats.
Pam, I wanted to get to you. Now, as far as we know, the official word from BLM and Steve Leonard is that I think we're up to 143, 144 dead horses from some sort of influenza at Canon City. You want to discuss that a little more about that?
Well, first off, I thought it was strange. I was wondering why Colorado Ag and CSU kept doing these reports, but nothing was actual lab reports from necropsies, supposedly. And Steve Leonard said he sent 15 horses to necropsy, or Kane, one of them, but Kane is the veterinarian. Okay. I had checked into Kane when PJ died, because I felt like there was nothing ever wrong with PJ. Just like Snowman, Steve Leonard had told me back on January 19th that Snowman injured himself in the pens there at Canyon City. Of course, SWAT turned it around, and everybody else turned it around and said that he was injured at the traps. And it's not true, because or that he had prior, they said that he was prior, like he'd already had the disease in his eye or blah blah blah. But nobody, there's hundreds of pictures of Snowman, and nobody had ever mentioned ever PJ or Snowman ever having injuries to their eyes. And so it's a common thing that happens in roundups, and when they go to holding, is the bolts that they have in the high pens are just at the right height that the horses always, you know, they hit their faces, they hit their eyes, and they get blinded in the roundups, either at the the roundup, or when they get shoved into pens and holding. And they've never, the BLM's known this for over 20 years, and they've never changed that bolt. Anyway, bottom line is, he admitted that Snowman injured himself there. And so I think if PJ actually had an injury and they actually did a necropsy on PJ, that it was all for like effect, to see how the public was going to react to the fact that this famous Picasso's son was being euthanized, you know, stuff like that. But bottom line is this cane, over 20 years ago, wasn't even a licensed veterinarian.
Okay, Pam, I wanted to ask you, what's going on with the so-called dead horses at Canon City that Steve Leonard is claiming 140 something horses have been killed from influenza, but that doesn't sound very accurate. You want to take that?
Yeah, I'm going to take this back about the West Douglas horses and the peons herd, because the majority of those horses that were rounded up with peons. So you all should know that the West Douglas horses were virtually wiped out in 2015. And so how many years later? 6 years later, they're claiming a roundup where they're going to take 475 horses off of West Douglas. Now, back at the same time of the Sam Wash Basin bogus gathers, the one that we saw was the highway gather. And literally what they did was lure horses to the highway because we chased them off. So that was totally bogus. And they also had a private lands gather to the north that they wanted to take Adobe wild horses, but they were scapegoating the Sam Wash Basin being out of bounds. And I had lots of conversations with Ben Smith about that, and I believe that I did get that roundup stopped at the time because they had no right. Colorado BLM has no right to go round up Wyoming wild horses. And it was all a lie. Ben Smith tried to tell me that, you know, because all the gates, and the gates are always open, the fences are down and in disrepair, and it's in the BLM, it's in the BLM manual, it's in the EAs, it's all over the place that it says that BLM is responsible for keeping fences in good order and gates closed to keep the horses in the HMA. Right. If they get out, they must expeditiously push them back in. And you know, that's the thing with the warriors at Sam Wash Basin. They're always claiming horses are out of bounds. And instead of doing something about it, you know, if they really cared about those horses, they would go in there and move them back in. I don't care. There are horses. Just do it. In fact, I was up there a couple weeks ago, was it, Kathe? And that we were up there
on April the 29th and 30th and May 1st.
Yeah. So I'm way up in the north, 66 north, and I see 5 stallions behind a fence, cattle fence. Mm-hmm. And there's a cattle guard. And these horses were, so this was part of the HMA, but you know, the cattle probably just stake claim on that land. And how did those horses get in there? One, I kind of suspect that they were put in there because they're 5 stallions and they can't get to the mares to breed.
Right.
And there's a cattle guard, and then later I saw Cindy Harms Wright show one of these horses, 2 of these horses said they were out of bounds. Well, they're not out of bounds. They're not out of bounds because they're on the HMAs that the cattle own the ranchers just own our land, period. So Cindy's always saying, well, this one's out of bounds and that one's out of bounds. There's always a whole bunch out of bounds in the north. Ben Smith tried to tell me, he says, oh, well, there's about 20 horses that must have jumped the fence. Okay, Ben, you know, babies and everything said 20 horses jumped the fence. And Kathe and I, when we were there for that gather, you know, we were getting after them because 46 on the highway, this was a highway safety gather, right? And the 46 gate is always left open, and it's almost impossible to close that gate. And I said, why do you not have a sign on that gate? Close the gate. You know, you got hunters coming in here. Anyway, I'm going to go back. So at the same time they were doing that, Ben Smith, they had a private lands gathers for the peons horses. Okay, and it was on the Greasewood allotment, which is an allotment that the cattle get to graze on, but they call it private land. So it was a private lands gather, and they did this all winter long, moving the peons horses closer to West Douglas. Okay, now they even claimed in the EA, for the peons EA for wipeout, that there were 450 peons horses outside the HMA, obviously in West Douglas. So they did this emergency gather on West Douglas, and they're just claiming that these horses were all West Douglas, no mention of the peons horses. I know because I have been in West Douglas fairly recently. There aren't that many horses there. There can't be that many horses there because horses don't breed like that. Right. You know, they got wiped out in 2015. There were maybe a few dozen horses in there. And I know of that who visits that a lot. And he had told me before that he thought that maybe there were 50 in there, but the ranchers are shooting them, the ranchers are taking them. And in fact, I went with him on West Douglas, and as we were going up, there's a guy on the right who had a stallion that he must have gelded. It was in a pen. It was a West Douglas horse being chased by a dog, and he couldn't handle the horse, and Don Moore was going to adopt it. So I saw that horse right there. So they, you know, the ranchers just kill them and they take them, and God knows going to slaughter whenever, whatever. So there couldn't possibly be many West Douglas horses in West Douglas. I mean, it's impossible. So they never mentioned the peons horses, and I keep telling everybody these were peons horses. And now they've got a roundup scheduled in August to wipe out the rest of them, not reducing the numbers whatsoever. So I was not well during the San Wash Basin in the West Douglas Roundup, so I couldn't go to the roundups. But Kathe was there, and also on the gather report, they had pens out there at the roundup site. And I was watching the gather report, and they'd say, well, 46 horses got rounded up, none shipped. This many horses got rounded up, none shipped. So I called both the head people for West Douglas, and what is going on? Why are you not shipping these horses to Canon City? And one of them goes, oh, well, because we're just, you know, they're in really good shape. You know, how they're saying now that they're in terrible shape. And they go, oh, they're in really good shape. And we're just letting them, you know, it's just some bull crap, both of them. And I gave them both live in hell because I knew they were going to ship those horses to slaughter. And speaking of the semis, you know, the first time they started using semis ever in my history in watching roundups is the Anarchy roundup. So I was the only one that kind of said, well, look, they're using semis now.
Right.
And I saw what their plan was going to be. So now they're using semis because they are trucks, semi-trucks are meant to ship to slaughter. You know, you don't, before that was always trailers. So they had pictures in the gather. So anyway, I got after these guys and I knew, you know, they would just, right after I did that, and I know they recorded me. I was really strong. They recorded me. I can always tell, most of them record me, and it's against the law. But shortly after that, Steve Leonard comes in and does his little photo op. Like he did at Canon City after there was a complaint, right? He gets it all organized. You know, that Ken guy, by the way, who came in and did that report about the conditions at Canon City and how many horses were there. It was a total bull crap. The whole thing was just covering Steve's art. And so he has a photo up there at West Douglas. But anyway, I watched the gather report and I posted something on it recently, and they went in there and changed it. And stupid me, I didn't copy everything. But they only showed in the pens, you know, West Douglas horses are very identifiable as the old Spanish barb genotype. And they're smaller, and most of them are bays. Not all of them are bays. Most of them are bays. They probably intermingled with the Peance horses. That's East Douglas. And they were incredibly healthy. Always incredibly healthy. This is bull crap about horses not being healthy on the range. They're starving to death or whatever. But they were very shy and skittish horses. And I visited the Peance at the same time, several times since then. And my God, they're the hardiest, shiniest horses wild horses I have ever seen. So they took 450, well, I don't even believe their numbers anyway, but however many they took, they say they took 457. And if there were 50 West Douglas horses in there, I would be surprised. So in those, they actually have a video of the pens in the roundup report. People can look at it. So these recent media posts where they say that the equine influenza is only affecting the West Douglas wild horses, which is totally ridiculous. I mean, how would everything about how they say this disease is operating is impossible. It's unscientific. Equine influenza is not typically a fatal disease. It has a good recovery. And how could, you've seen pictures that Kathe has spotted some bay horses in an area behind the trees at Canon City, which I think is up front, just a front that they have some West Douglas wild horses and that they're all bays. Well, they're not all bays. You know, I saw a couple family bands with, you know, a little bit of gray and roan, typically bays, but anyway. So they use this picture in a lot of the media of two of them that look like they had the eyes gouged out in the roundup. Both of them on the left side. And I have those pictures. And they're not at Canon City. They're from the corrals at the West Douglas Roundup. And the reason they're using, I mean, those horses just got their eyes gouged out. I don't know about the right ones because you can't see it. They use those pictures for the media to say that it's the West Douglas because they look really sick in those pictures.
Right.
Because of the eyes
May I interject something on that? The pictures and all the community information was by Return to Freedom.
Yep.
And at the time, I could not get to West Douglas Roundup because I-70 was closed. and it was closed. Nobody could really access where they were taking the horses from and everything, unless you lived over there, like in Rifle or in that area. So I was urgently asking Return to Freedom, Friends of Animals, and Laura Lee from Wild Horse Education to get me information. I even asked a photographer who Return to Freedom led into believing she was supposed to be in a certain area, and they misled her so bad that she didn't get any photographs. She actually was in East Douglas, not where they were rounding up the horses. And the bottom line is it was all just like a setup. It's after a few days, Return to Freedom didn't even put any more reports out, and they were the community mouthpiece.
Right.
They were the ones that the BLM said on their web, on their bulletin and everything else, were the ones that were going to give the community the information about the roundup. And so the pictures, like Pam has some pictures, I have, that they're from Return to Freedom, but nothing that I asked for, and nor did I ever get a respond to my PMs or to my posts to their page for help, for get some VIN numbers on the trucks, take some photographs of the you know, contractors, do something. We need to stop this. So I'm getting frustrated over here in Northeast Colorado, and that's in Northwest Colorado. And by that time I'm learning that Steve Leonard's on like a Tuesday or Wednesday. He said he was taking some West Douglas horses to Canyon City. And when he said that and they posted that, I'm going, oh yeah, I'm going to Canyon City. So I go before I take the photographs, my 280 horses plus, that's all that's there. Okay. I go again on the 15th and on the 15th of August, and I found those West Douglas horses, and there were no more than 25 horses there. I think recently when I was just there may have been 23. I think Pam might have counted 15 or so, but there were several that are kind of around the corner. But this is all they ever took. They never took 427, because I know where they went. When I went and found Russell Tank 2 weeks, 3 weeks prior, is when my Navajo guide told me he'd seen hundreds of horses down there. And then I went over by Gray Mountain and I found West Douglas horses and dumped BLM palominos on Navajo reservation land and on private Barrett land. So I know that the West Douglas horses, the majority of them went straight to slaughter out.
Yeah, so after I had talked to those BLM guys about why they were not shipping them to Canyon City, that's when, right after that, Steve Leonard said that we're shipping some. So whatever, if they do have some West Douglas horses over there, it's a front. So anyway, so I called Steve Leonard. Sorry, my phone. I called Steve Leonard several times, but I was alerted, and this really pissed me off. I just want to tell you all the stuff that he told me during this. But I found out last minute that there was going to be an adoption at Canyon City, 700 horses. It was going to involve Sandwich Basin horses, Red Desert horses, and other. And 2 days before it was going to happen. And I was ripped. Kathe had actually called over there when she found that out to get adoption papers, and I did that as well.
Yeah, I did remember an assumed name, but they had my phone number.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Because you can't get Steve Leonard to call me back, yeah. But he did. But anyway, he said that, so there was nothing on the registry. I called the, nothing on, you know, the registry for adoptions coming up. I called Holly with she's the assistant director of the Wild Horse and Burro program nationally.
Right.
I have met Holly. It's Cook now, used to be Waddle. And I said, what's going on here? You know, we haven't had a formal adoption for the San Juan Basin horses yet. And there's going to be an adoption that, you know, it's not on the registry. She knew nothing about it. Nothing about it. So she calls up Steve Leonard and they go through their little conniving thing. And Steve Leonard actually hadn't called me back yet. But after I talked to Holly, of course, he did after that. And so he tells me that it's a private adoption. There were 20 people on the list. He wouldn't tell me who they were. He wouldn't allow us to file for adoption. And nothing announced about San Juan Basin horses. I was livid. So anyway, and I had seen advocates, Earl Walker, Naja Ryder, Claire with Sky Dog, they were all going. I didn't know Return to Freedom was going to be there. But they were doing fundraisers for San Juan Basin horses with the end date on November 18th, but not saying that there was an adoption. This is just, I don't care if people think that, well, so what, they're adopting horses. No. This is highly illegal. This is highly illegal. We are all stakeholders of these horses. We all have to have an opportunity to adopt them. And so they were all sneaking around. Nobody said anything. Claire told somebody that she wasn't going unless there were 2 specific San Juan Basin horses. And she went. So anyway, when Steve finally called me back, now he's trying to tell me, and Holly, in the meantime, she posts something on the registry, right? And it's the wrong date. And then I told about that, and then she corrected it like the day before the adoption. She's got it on the registry now, and there's 700 horses. 700, supposed to be 500. 700, I don't know. It's supposed to be San Juan Basin and Red Desert horses. Now, first of all, as far as Red Desert horses go, Kathe and I were following that, and Kathe spoke to Steve Leonard, and he told her, I think it was January of 2021, that he shipped them out.
When he found out I had seen the horses and found them, I asked him where all the horses, where were the Red Desert, 1,900 horses, 2,200 horses.
You were taking pictures.
And this is February 23rd. And he says, oh, they're already gone. And I I was flabbergasted. I couldn't even talk.
Okay, so I said, well, so you have, and they had already had another private one back in August that was kept kind of hush from advocates. You know, and Return to Freedom was involved ultimately. So this was just so wrong, so convoluted. So at this point, Steve gets back to me after he talks to Holly, and he says, well, there's not going to be any San Juan Basin horses. Well, of course you're going to say that, but all these advocates are raising money to get these San Juan Basin horses in secrecy, not saying anything about the adoption. And Carol Walker said she wasn't invited, but she was there. And the word was, when they described the stories, was that Steve Leonard told them they could have no binoculars and no cameras. Well, so that they couldn't see that there weren't that many horses there, right?
Right.
So, And then after the adoption, you know, I found out that return to freedom. He called me back later. I think he was digging. And I said, so Steve, how many horses were adopted? And he said 8. And I said, and I saw that return to freedom got a stallion, because they're the only ones that get uncut stallions. And how many horses did they adopt? And he says, I'm not going to tell you. And later out, I found out that they adopted 8, the stallion in the family, which is a good thing. But this was all done in secrecy. And then I knew that Claire Staples was there. And when she gets back from this, so she said she was not going unless she was getting San Basin horses. And when she got back home, she puts out a fundraiser. Usually, you know, she shows the horses getting off the trailer. She puts out a fundraiser for $10,000 and said, I'm not going to show you the horses. We're going to see how this goes. She raised $20,000 that day.
And who was this? Who was this?
Claire Staples was Sky Dog. She raised 20,000 horses for horses sight unseen. So then the next day she shows these 4 horses coming off, which I was delighted to see. They were, you know, elderly horses and the kind of horses, you know, they weren't the famous horses, but they weren't branded. They didn't look familiar to me on any HMAs. I don't know where the heck they came from, but anyway, no San Basin horses. So just so much shiftiness going on. So let me get back to, so at that time, I asked Steve Leonard, I said, so Steve Leonard, what's with the West Douglas horses, and which were peants? I told him, I said, I know that those were 450. If you took 450, they were peants. Why are you going to have an adoption for them? We're not hearing anything about the West Douglas horses or peants horses, and you know, where are they? And I, you know, I already knew that they were most likely shipping them straight to slaughter. He said, well, we shipped them all back east because, you know, they're too ugly and people around here don't want them. And I said, oh, so you're sending our Western horses back east where most people don't even know? He said, better chance for adoption. I said, most people don't even know there are wild horses.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he says, well, there's more people. Yeah, I said, there's more kill butters. So he told me point blank, like he told Kathe, that the 900 red desert horses were gone. And she has proof of that with pictures. And now all the West Douglas horses were gone, right? They went back east. And then after this, he called me back after this private adoption thing. And I just drilled him with questions. He really wouldn't tell me much, very secretive. I think the rest of the people were San Basin people on the sly because they were raising money for this adoption without saying about the adoption. So I said, okay, Steve. So how many wild horses are at Canon City at this time? And this was November 19th or 20th, right after the adoption, which was November 18th.
Right.
627 San Basin horses, he said, were there. Prior to that, he had told me on the San Basin horses, because I said, you know, Steve, we're hearing all kinds of numbers from advocates and AWHC who was there and all kinds of people, different numbers because the governor supposedly stopped the roundup, which we know he didn't. So how many horses did BLM round up from the San Basin?
Right.
So he said 684. which was what was on the gather report, and everybody, you know, AWHC says 400 and something and whatever. And 49 were released, and 5 were killed, and 3 went down to Disappointment Valley, the Spring Creek herd. 3 fillies. I have no idea why they did that, because those horses are the walking dead. So then I started questioning him about I said, well, how many got darted? You know, how many got birth control? And I don't believe they're using PCP. We know that BLM is using Gonacon.
Yeah.
And you know, he went on to this whole thing, and I said, well, I would like to do a FOIA request with the vet who handled those horses, and before they were put back. And he says, well, we don't provide FOIA for veterinarians. I said, oh, really? Oh, really? He said, anyway. I said, you don't? I said, well, I'll request it from BLM. And he said, well, there wasn't a veterinarian there. I said, oh, really? He said, the BLM did it. I said, oh, the BLM did the darting this time? I mean, usually there's a veterinarian. In fact, Don Moore had done a bunch of San Wash Basin darting right there in the old corral. And I says, well, if BLM did it, then, you know, I'm going to request a FOIA request on that part of it. And then he said, well, no, they didn't do it. SWAT did it. SWAT did it.
I was right there.
Huh?
I was right there when they were leaving. I was right there when they were leaving on the 11th.
Right. So SWAT, I mean, that's not really how it's supposed to go down. You know, a veterinarian, I mean, these people who dart aren't veterinarians. They shouldn't even be darting, period. But so you can just start to understand the convoluted lies. And they all lie, but he is a bad liar. Because just look at the scenario he went through, okay? So he told me that, and then get this, AWHC said that meteor was taken during this roundup. I was watching everything. And so then after the roundup, AWHC was saying, or that Scott Wilson that's with the AWHC, that meteor's still on the basin, he escaped the roundup, and so on and so forth. So I'm wondering where Meteor is, if he went to slaughter or what. So I said, Steve, so did you see Meteor? He says, well, who's Meteor? You know, we don't use names, we use numbers. So I said, I think you know who Meteor is, Steve. He's the only Pinto Palomino in the in the entire state, and you're supposed to be recording these animals that come into Canon City.
Some kind of proof, right?
Has he been in Canon City? And then he said, yes, he was, and then we released him. So you're getting all these conflicted things from SWAT, BLM, AWHC. It just goes on and on. It's so convoluted in the whole matter of things. It's crazy. So, well,
didn't Steve Leonard also say originally that there were hundreds of West Douglas horses that were round up, and then he said they were gone and they were just San Wash Basin horses, and then all of a sudden now we have all these West Douglas horses that have died.
Right. I'm getting to that. I'm trying to show everybody, because nobody's listening. I'm trying to show you this is a conspiracy to show on record the disappearance of the West Douglas wild horses.
Right.
They were peons. No peons horses are anywhere to be found. I know what they look like. Kathe has sent me all her pictures she's taken at Canon City. I was down there with the Florence adoption. I saw Canon City. So he tells me now, later, that there are, because I asked him point blank, there were 627 San Juan Basin horses, you know, minus the ones that were released and the 5 that died and the 3 that went to, you know, Spring Creek. So 445 West Douglas horses after he told me they were gone.
Right.
900 Red Desert horses after he told Kathe they were gone. We're at Canon City, and that's like what's the 72 here? I have anyway 2100. So
like 1953 total or something.
Right. So so now, you know, we had one, and there's not a lot of San Juan Basin. You know, we're talking hundreds, almost 700 San Juan Basin horses they're saying were removed in big, massive slaughter trailers. And so there were 73 horses at the Florence adoption. It was supposed to be 79. There was some excuse about that, or 78. And we're not seeing many horses at Canon City, San Juan Basin horses even.
Right.
So they all went to Russell Tank too, I believe. And now that they were going to do another adoption, and I called out BLM on that. I'm the only one that called BLM's negligence. And we could do a whole thing here on that adoption and everything that went on in there. And there's a lot you people have not heard, like kill buyers and so on and so forth. So so now it's getting crunch time that it's going to be discovered, one, that there aren't enough San Juan Basin horses to do these adoptions that they have peeled out here. Okay. So, and then the West Douglas horses never been up for adoption, never been mentioned, never been nothing. So, and they know that what I know, because Steve drilled me. So they canceled you know, they've been working off of COVID,
Right.
keeping us out because of COVID until, you know, they can't do that anymore. So they come up with this ridiculous conspiracy of equine influenza. I mean, they're so stupid. I mean, they couldn't think of anything else. I mean, it's not a fatal disease, people.
Right.
It's not a fatal disease. How many times do you have to hear that? And everybody's just spurring, oh, all these horses died from equine influenza. And then, you know, they see what I say, and then they go in there and they come up with some other, like, well, we're going to add this to the mix because this helped kill them, and so on and so forth. And the West Douglas horses aren't even there. If there might be 24 there, I count, or 20 something, because Kathe's recent pictures, I see all these bays, but they're only bays. You know, I haven't seen any Piant wild horses. So this whole thing is a conspiracy, and they're doing the same thing at Wheatland, and they did the same thing at Delta. And I could go back to that 2018 or 19 of first Staci-lee roundup and do a whole thing on that, about that whole conspiracy of strangles. So this is a total conspiracy. I want to tell you that Citizens Against Equine Slaughter is the only group, other than me and Kathe, they're the only group that's doing any investigation.
Right.
Everybody else is just repeating the bull crap. You know,
Right.
oh, look at, you know. And so she filed for, they filed for FOIAs for the vets and the cane and all of that, and BLM. And it was all redacted. No information, no processing information, no shipping information, no nothing. Totally redacted. Okay, people? Is this a conspiracy? Right. And then she recently, Val recently filed a FOIA with the state that the governor's saying are we going to get the state vet involved? Well, they've already been involved. And Steve Lennon won't let them in. Let me tell you that. Steve Lennon will not let the state in for an investigation. So they came back redacted. And she spoke to the girl and she says, well, you know, we're allowed to do this because to protect the owners of livestock.
What are the
Right. So what I said.
What does livestock have to do with the quote dead horses that don't even exist, or who knows? The whole thing is crazy.
I want to let you all know that the state's in on this too, and Kathe can really get into that too. But so she said, well, first of all, this is not livestock.
Right.
You know, I could see if it's livestock owned by a rancher and, you know, need some privacy there, but I don't even know about that.
Wait, were they calling the horses livestock?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. But they're not livestock, because livestock is animals raised for human consumption, and that's illegal in the US. So calling them livestock is a lie. Yeah.
Not only
that, she said, well, first of all, this is not livestock, and we own them.
Right.
We own them. They're wild horses. We own them. They're wildlife. And we have a right to that information. So I just want to let everybody know. And Kathe has a lot around that. But the state, the governor and the state are not going to help in this situation. They're all in on it. And I think all the states, governors, in fact, Polis had a gathering of the governors of the Western states.
Mm-hmm.
And Kathe was saying that after that, she was seeing stuff from senators from Montana. Maybe you could talk about that, Kathe.
Yeah, it was, he had a 2-day conference for all the governors for what they were going to do with wildlife in their states after, like the BLM, U.S. Forest Service hands over that responsibility for their management. And nobody was paying attention. It was just a little 20-second blurb on CBS News Thursday morning. And by Friday, they weren't even talking about it. So Polis was the lead at this conference. So, but right after that, not 2 days afterwards, I see Utah's governor, I see New Mexico's governor all emboldening themselves about horse slaughter, wild horse and horse slaughter. And New Mexico had bills for equine slaughter for consumption recently, and I don't know what the status is or anything on that. But Gordon, Wyoming's governor, went immediately back and posted right away that he had a bill in to take wild horses to slaughter for his dog food factory idea. Okay. So so on Easter Sunday, I'd gone to Wheatland facility, and I was expecting like some more horses than what I'd seen there on November 5th last year for their 50-year anniversary adoption event. And lo and behold, yeah, there were a few more horses, but at that adoption, Chris Kellerman had told me he had 900 horses. And if there were 600 or 700 there, I would have been surprised, but he wouldn't let any of the adopters, and he would not let me in, of course. He and that whole bunch of, they put a banner up about their 50 years anniversary and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
They chased me out of there, nothing flat. But anyway, the bottom line is, so let's say give them 900 horses on November 5th. So I go back on November 15th, and lo and behold, I'm seeing semi tracks out of there. I missed a semi leaving there by maybe 20 minutes because it had started snowing and they were fresh semi tracks. And the only semis that there weren't tracks like going in. So he'd already been in there, setting in there, probably gathering horses up. 30 horses at a time fit in a semi. Okay, so So I leave, and all I got is the picture of the semi tracks, fresh semi tracks going out. I tried to chase it down, but it was already gone. The speed limit's 80 miles per hour out there, and there's no way you could catch any of those guys once they get past you. So bottom line is I look, and there's not 900 horses.
Right.
There's maybe 600. So I'm letting it all go. They're having their roundups all over. Carol Walker's out photographing horses and going to Rock Springs and doing all this other kind of stuff. Nobody's looking at Wheatland. Nobody's paying attention to what Wheatland's doing. Okay, so so I go out Easter because I keep Carol Walker saying, oh, they're taking all these horses to Wheatland and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going, oh yeah, I'm going to go there and there's not going to be that many horses, blah, blah, blah. I go on Easter Sunday, and they'd taken all the horses from the south end pens and moved them all in. And any of the horses that were on the north end, they moved them kind of in. So they were all in there, and there was only one truck there. And I don't think there was even anybody, because I walked on to the facility. Nobody came after me, and they always come after me. They come out of nowhere with trucks and stuff. And I didn't see any trucks or backhoes or any of the ATVs that they used to feed these horses, but they moved them all in. Now, this was during a strangles outbreak. Why did they take all the horses that should have been spread out and bring them in? Well, easy feeding, holiday weekend, whatever. But I didn't see any sick horses, and I saw some kind of hungry horses, but they looked to be in pretty good shape to me. And no strangles, I didn't see any horses even laying down. There's no room for them to lay down. There's no room for them to turn around. There's no room in those pens. They're livestock. They were cattle pens before they became these equine pens. And so I'm going, okay, yeah, well, there looks to be about 700, 800 horses, I could count them all. I have photographs that I can literally put on a big screen and sit there and count horses if I wanted to. But I'm a pretty good estimator. Anyway, bottom line is, so I'm thinking, wow, this is sick, and so I go home because the weather wasn't that great anyway. And I wasn't about to go up to the office and nobody there, so screw it. So anyway, I go back. I went back, let me see. I was just there. Can't remember what day. Okay. Anyway, oh yeah, it was last Saturday. I went there last Saturday. Okay. There are thousands of horses in there, and every inch of that place is packed with horses. Now, I don't know what the BLM is saying, how many horses are there, but they keep saying that there's a 3,500 limit that they can take.
Right.
There's not 3,500 horses in there, but it's packed. I mean, literally, I saw horses that were at that trough along the fence eating, and some of them get turned around somehow. And so how can their butts and their tails be eating food? They can't even move to turn around and eat food.
And they have strangles, right? Yeah.
And then they moved, and what was really, really distressing to me, again, there was only one truck there, but I did see 3 hands, one out on an ATV, one where there's a red pickup parked right in the middle of the pens. And I saw another guy with a little cat over to the side with a bale. But what really, really distressed me is the fact that there's 3, count them, 3 giant houses that they moved in. They're manufactured type houses. And they've got propane tanks set up and everything. I have no idea what's going on at Wheatland, but it is definitely a forced slaughter livestock pen. And
okay, so well, Wheatland just opened, and it's supposedly a private facility, though. You have to wonder how the hell you can have a private facility that houses federally owned horses, which is just crazy. But Wheatland just opened up, I think, just opened up in November.
It opened up on January and February of 21. And okay. Then there in October of 21, talking to Chris Kellerman, who was the manager there at the facility, and it was only him and a secretary, and he had like 600 horses in there. And I go, well, who helps you feed these and all this? And
Right.
he goes, well,
Right.
he goes, I'm fine. I can, sometimes she helps me, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then that's when I asked him all kinds of questions about, like, well, where did the semi, first of all, I asked him, because I knew he was supposed to get 124 horses that day from I-80. And I said, and all they have is these gooseneck 12 plus horse trailers, and he had about 3 of them in there. And they don't use semis from I-80 to bring the horses in to Wheatland or Rock Springs or Palomino Valley. They use those gooseneck trailers. And so 3 of them had hauled in, so that would have been maybe 90 horses. So 128, that means the one semi took some horses somewhere.
So they only had a few hundred horses a few months ago, and now all of a sudden they have thousands of horses. We don't know where these horses came from. We don't know anything about them.
Carol Walker's been saying something about they've been rounding up horses, but I don't see, I mean, they had to have been like taking horses out of Palomino Valley and Rock Springs and off the range to get this many horses. I mean, literally April 17th to last weekend, whatever that date is, the 13th or something like that. So anyway, bottom line is in less than a month's time, they have all those horses in there. And it's,
Right.
and like I said, once the horses are on semis, they aren't going to this facility, even though they have all these horses, but they had all that time, day after day, of 3 trailers, 4 trailers, 5 trailers, however many, from wherever they were getting them from, because I say Rock Springs and Palomino Valley and off the range, they're driving 90 horses or more a day in there, probably more. But when I asked Steve Kellerman how many horses he brought in that day, he goes, I don't know, you have to ask, I forgot what his name was, the guy at the BLM, Wyoming BLM, that does the community bulletins and stuff. He says, whatever the BLM says I got is what I have.
Kathe, one thing about that too is you've been seeing this recent huge increase at a time where they're not doing roundups because of foaling season. So they are gathering them from probably other holding facilities.
And plus they put in 4 or 5 of those blue foal, the little like calf houses where they put the baby calves. They got the little houses for like the foals. And when I was there on Easter, I saw 3 little tiny, like less than a week old babies, 3 of them jumping around and in the pen. And when I was there last Saturday, nothing. There was, I didn't see any of those babies in there, and the foals, the yearlings. I mean, it was so thick of horses and stuff. You couldn't.
So it sounds like, because we're going to have to wrap this up shortly. It sounds like all these horses are in Wheatland, which is a private facility. So that's basically an excuse for not letting anyone come in and see, even though they hardly let the public come in when it's a public facility.
Right.
So private facility is just one step further of, you know, hiding what's going on. So all these horses mysteriously appeared, and there's obviously no documentation as to where they came from or what these horses are. And then they've got these structures with propane.
Yeah, they've got those 3 structures moved in.
Are we thinking that maybe Wheatland is going to be turned into some kind of dog food factory?
Well, I know Gordon wants his dog food factory, so this has got to be the livestock area, the livestocking area where he gets the animals from. It's got to be. Because
it sounds like something like that is going.
We need to find out what those 3
structures are. Yeah, with the propane.
Yeah, and absolutely, even though it was Saturday last weekend, there was only like 3 people out there for all those horses. Do we know who actually owns Wheatland? I do. I found out that it was a woman. Okay, they opened, they got the property in January of 21. They opened the property on February, but it's a woman out of Nebraska who's a livestock, she's a livestock facility owner, has several livestock companies in
Right.
in Nebraska, and she bought this old livestock pen under a welding company's name.
Yeah.
And so this is what the BLM does. They get these facilities for livestocking, like in Kansas and Oklahoma, and they're putting horses in livestock to kill and to slaughter pens.
Well, yeah,
And-
that's what a livestock facility is. It's basically just
Yeah,
a
that's
holding
all
pen
it is.
for slaughter.
You just
Right.
look at the way they're feeding the horses.
Right. 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 It looks
And,
exactly like a feedlot.
They had 6 horses separate that were the flashy two pintos and some flashing ones that I'm sure are famous horses from one of the Wyoming ranges that they got to keep separate because the rest of them, it's just a sea of brown horses, you know. But the bottom line is they had those separate, and there's no way. I just read today that BLM blurb on Twitter that they said they have over 1,375 horses that have strangles.
The whole thing, people, you've got to have to realize this is a slaughter industry, period.
Right.
Everything else is a bullshit lie. I'm sorry.
Right. I mean, how could that many horses have strangles? And of course, where is the documentation? Because if any of that is true at Wheatland, and if any of that is true at Canon City, all the Bureau of Land Management, and their salaries are paid by taxpayers, so basically they work for the public, though they act like they're kings and queens. But all they have to do is literally photograph every single horse, because they brand them all with, probably they do that to nullify the law, every single horse, and just go down the list. This horse is sick, and here's the documentation from some independent vet. And if they had like an animal rights activist come in and actually view all of this, because clearly none of the nonprofits, not Return to Freedom, not Sandwash Advocate Team, not American Wild Horse Campaign, I mean, they make millions of dollars, like the Humane Society and all of those shill companies. So they can't be trusted. But all the BLM has to do is just prove it. Here's the pictures, here's the actual vet report, like an independent vet, and just prove it. And the fact that they don't do that, I mean, only a crook has something to hide, right? If these horses really exist and they're really sick, then it would be very easy to prove it. And the fact that they're not willing to prove it and seem to go out of their way to lie about it, clearly only a crook has something to hide. We know
and they're
that
redacting everything. I mean,
Yeah.
why do you redact something because you don't want anybody?
I mean, what are they, the CIA? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But anyone involved in livestock clearly has a network of kill buyers and all of that. And I know that Wyoming, I spoke to Bill, I think Bill Forte was his name, because he was quoted in Oil City News several months ago. And I actually quoted him in an article I wrote. And I spoke to him on the phone a few months ago. And he was quoted as trying to get U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Bureau of Land Management to go along with putting our wild horses, taking them off the range, and putting them on the Indian reservation, the Wind River Indian Reservation, which are very pro-slaughter. They've been very outspoken about that, in order to bypass U.S. law. And he was actually quoted in the paper saying that. And I spoke to him, and he said, yes, that's Wyoming. Wyoming's a beautiful state, but it's very problematic for wildlife. That's where Yellowstone is, and they're killing all the wolves too. So anything coming out of Wyoming, not just the governor, but anybody that works there, is not in the best interest of anything other than the ranchers. But Wheatland is a concern. It's completely illogical that all these horses have strangles. Like, where's the proof? Where all these horses come from? Especially since so many people that work for the BLM were nailed for selling horses to kill buyers, and they still have the jobs, right? The guy that runs the wild horse program in Oregon, I can't think of his name at the moment, but he was nailed for selling a lot of horses to the famous kill buyer Tom Davis, and he still has a taxpayer-supported job.
And
So
that
we
was
know,
most out of Canon City, by the way. Most of those
yes.
horses were out of
Yes, right. There's that whole network. So we know they can't be trusted. So we'll have to look further into what's going on at Canon City and Wheatland, especially what's going on with Wheatland with that owner. It sounds like they're breaking ground to have everything in place for like a dog food factory. I mean, they've already said as much, and they're pushing for it. And a few years ago, they had it so that you could classify horses as livestock. So incrementally, you know, boom, boom, boom. Once we closed the last official horse slaughter facilities in the U.S., like the next day, they were trying to get it back, you know, incrementally, taking the horses' land, calling them livestock, having all these private facilities, shipping them east. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to step back and go, oh, well, this is clearly what's going on. It has nothing to do with saving this highly endangered species. And the nonprofits seem pretty complicit in it. I know there was that adoption where a couple of the wild horses, the famous wild horses, Michelangelo was one of them, went for like $10,000-$12,000. Normally they go for a few hundred. I mean, think how many more horses you could have saved.
That, by the way, was a rigged adoption.
Yes, yeah, it
was a
crazy.
silent auction. It was planned, and I think the money that the animal sanctuary has and the other sanctuaries comes from the BLM. The BLM is giving out huge grants, and then, you know, so they have this whole thing planned. It's our money, everything's our money, and so BLM is not supposed to be making any money off of our wild horses, but they're making money hand in fist, and you know, changed the whole dynamic of adoptions. It's so corrupt in every corner, and people just have to stop believing the bull crap. I mean, these equine pandemics all of a sudden
I know.
Covering up slaughter. That's it, covering up slaughter. And we have to do something about this. We have to go against the slaughter thing that's going on right now. And Kathe and I have a really good case, and no other, you know, like I said, Citizens Against Equine Slaughter is the only one that's doing any investigation, seeing potential cover up. None of the other nonprofits are all going along with the BLM.
Right. They don't want to rock the boat, and they well, I think American Wild Horse Campaign got what, $11 million for their darting PCP program or some nonsense like that.
That came as 11 million that's now being used to give out grants to darters and sanctuaries and trainers and all of this, so that BLM puts his thumb on all of them.
Right.
And now they don't speak bad about the BLM. They support the BLM, and because they want their money, and it's just turned into a total crapshoot because of that. And who the heck would want to be sterilizing horses that are brought down to just absolutely extinction crippling levels anyway? I mean, anybody could see that this is a joint effort here for money.
Well, the whole PZP thing is a lie, because all of these, they're not really nonprofits, they're profiteers. And Marty Irby and Wayne Pacell are leading the bandwagon, the Vets for Mustangs, all of these groups. But it's a lie because they sold it as, oh, it'll stop roundups, never stop roundups. Then they said it would decrease roundups, never decrease roundups. And the fact is, it's not even PZP. We know for a fact, because we all have spoken to several officials at the BLM, that they're using Gonacon and they're actually putting taxpayer money towards finding a way to sterilize horses. Of course, I'm thinking, sterilize what horses? At the end of this year, we're not going to have any horses left on the range. That's a fact. There's what, maybe 15, 20,000, if that. There's not 50, 60,000. And however many that they claim are in the corrals, it's got to be what, a third of that. And from the numbers, they clearly just don't add up. So I don't even understand why they're supposedly looking into sterilizing the wild horses when there aren't even going to be any left between the roundups and the slaughter. It's like,
it's insanity.
It's insanity. It's insanity. But we're going to have to leave it there. We can always talk again. So we're going to have to further investigate. It looks like it's really just us and a few other people trying to hold the government accountable. It doesn't look like anyone else is really for the wild horses and burros. I always want to mention the burros. Most of them just get shipped to China for the donkey skin trade. So that's just that's almost a moot point at this point. They don't even make it to the feedlots. They just straight out to China. But Pam and Kathe, thank you so much for coming forward and speaking the truth. Very few people do these days, as we all know. And people don't like to be challenged, because when you do speak the truth, people don't like to be challenged, and so they shoot the messenger when they should be mad at the people we're talking about, instead that they're mad at the messenger. It is what it is. So we'll have to end it there. And thank you so much for talking. And
thank you, Staci, for getting the truth out the way that you are.
Well, thank you guys. I mean, I'm in Florida, so I can't go and photograph these darn people, but we will keep it out there.
On that note, Staci, just PM me and ask me what photos you want, and I'll send you whatever you want to see.
I will.
I think it's better that way than me just chucking photographs to you guys.
Yeah, and hopefully people will listen to this and listen to it and kind of think about, why are all these nonprofits complicit, and what is going, why are these facilities private, and why are the public ones kind of private, and what's really going on? I mean, there's more than enough to be highly suspicious of. It's not even like secretive. I mean, it's literally out there in the open. Yeah,
it's 60 feet from your face.
Yeah,
in Wyoming, you can literally drive 60 feet from the BLM fence and see all the horses.
Yeah, it's not, they're not even trying to cover it up because
people
they
just
know.
scream by there and don't even look. People in Wyoming are horse killers. They don't care.
That's true. And wolf killers and grizzly bear killers. Yeah, they're the culture out west.
Like the town of Chugwater is proud that their name came from the fact that they were the only state in the nation with the name Chugwater, and that it was because they ran buffalo off of the cliffs that are right there, and when the buffalo would hit, it would make a chug sound. So chug. Then the big rancher that owned all the water around the area, they put water to it, so Chugwater, and that's only 27 miles from Wheatland. So
and that might be why they picked Wheatland. But like I said, the BLM could clear it up if they wanted to. We know they're not going to. We know they can't because they're lying, and we know what's really going on. The fact that all these other people are complicit shows you that they're corrupted too. But like I said, it's almost like, why are they looking for a stronger sterilant when we all know there aren't going to be enough wild horses left to sterilize? That's kind of where we're going. I mean, if you go on the BLM's own website and you look under AML, which of course nobody would know what that means, but that's how many horses are allowed on 10 million acres or 10,000 acres. They actually have the gall to put down numbers for burros 2 to 4. 2 to 4 animals. That's it. 2 to 4 animals. I mean, you couldn't repopulate the earth with 4 horny humans, let alone horses or burros. And then for horses, they'll have 5 to 10, 10 to 20. But even if you add up the high number of the range, it still doesn't add up. And this was last year I started doing that. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that they're lying and that they're going to wipe out all of the horses and burros and probably wolves and anything else they can get a hand on for the ranchers. But then the ranchers the ranchers are just kind of the face of evil, because the ranchers are going to get a rude awakening too if they think they're going to own all that land, because what's coming in after them is the lithium and the oil and the gas. They've got thousands
and the water. They're going to take every inch of water.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's even going to come in. And so the oil and the gas and the lithium for the electric cars, they're happy to let everyone hate the ranchers, because when the ranchers scoot out the horses and the wolves and the coyotes and everything else, they're going to get a rude awakening too. And at that point, the land is just going to be completely destroyed.
Now it has to be Mars-like, because lithium can't grow in anything. It has to grow in a desert, nothing, wasteland.
Well, between removing all the herbivores that would prevent some of the wildfires, and then having the cattle and the sheep just destroy the land, it's kind of looking like Mars, actually. I remember I was out in South Dakota.
Sandwich Basin. I have a picture of all the big oil rigs and a big outfit that left right behind Vermilion Peaks or Bluffs and Sandwich Basin, and that's where a lot of horses like to come over from, like Wyoming side, and or vice versa. I don't know if how they actually make the routes, because someday I'm going to get a drone and go up there and fly it and see. Yeah, like
you need a drone. Actually, Sandwich Basin is looking to become a recreational area for dirt bikes, right?
Right. I had the big run-in with all the dirters on the 29th and 30th. I had a big run-in with all of those guys.
Right. This was supposed to be.
They actually say
for horses. Right.
Yeah. The HMA is for herd management, not multi-purpose use of anything. Man was not supposed to be on those lands. Horses and wildlife were. Okay. Right. So the BLM took it over to manage it, and they managed it for their profit and for everybody's little greed. But bottom line is those dirters, this one guy got in my face after I told him to shut the gate up there on 318. And I told him, we put that fence up to keep the horses and people from getting hurt. Right. And he goes, I'll screw you. Who made you an authority? He goes, and furthermore, these hills have been ours forever. And he goes, now that the horses are gone, they're ours. So get gone. It's like, and then he left the gate open. And it's like, I should have taken a whole bunch of chains and locks and locked them in.
That's the way they are. And I know we have to finish up here, but I also want to mention, this is another thing that Wild Horse Warriors or SWAT never revealed. But a couple of years ago, Colorado Parks and Wildlife is leasing 650,000 acres near Cold Mountain, near the lake draw, to hunt wildlife. So the hunting in there, and then that includes mountain lions, because CPW upped their mountain lion kill plan 2 years ago, so they can hunt in the Sandwich Basin mountain lions all year long. And those advocates over there, they didn't tell us about this plan for the recreation and the off-roaders. Cindy Harms Wright for the first 2 years, she organized the races. So they just, they're totally complicit with everything that's going on in there. So hunting
almost makes you wonder how they can call themselves a wild horse advocate or any kind of advocate when they're really just advocating for themselves and clearly not the horses.
After the roundup in February, they immediately went out and started darting what was left. And I'm telling you, there's not that many horses out there.
Right. And none of them are veterinarians. None of them are ex-military sharpshooters. I looked up Stella Trueblood and Aletha Wolf.
Dove.
And Dove.
Wolf.
Yeah, Wolf and a few others, and they work for like massage therapy places, and they're secretaries, and they're basically anything but a licensed
There's one that's a
veterinarian.
nurse. There's one that's a nurse. I think her name's West.
Right.
And she's an ex-service person, but she's the only one that she's
Yeah,
the only one.
everyone else is like a housewife.
Yeah.
They're not equine specialists. They're not sharpshooters. They don't know anything. And who's paying for the dart guns and the darts and the drugs and all of that? You know, Humane Society owns a patent on PZP. They don't do, you know, they got like $400 million in the bank they don't use on animals. In fact, they've stolen millions of dollars. So obviously they're making money. Someone's paying for all of that. Who might that be? The SWAT team has not really come forward to say, and they could, this is who is paying for the dart guns. You always see them on the pictures,
Right.
With a smiling face of some woman. You know, she looks like a Midwest housewife, and you see that,
Yeah.
you think, oh, they're doing good. You know, the face of evil can be a baby. It can be anything you want. It's not necessarily what we think of as evil.
Stop giving them money.
Yeah, stop giving them money. Yeah, we got to stop giving them money. So I'm going to end on that, guys, and we will continue to work together, and hopefully people will listen and learn something.